Claudia, hey everyone. So now we are on the third session for the day, and we're very excited to have Claudia with us, a technologist, a product leader, and a tester at the core. So Claudia, welcome, and
Thank you very much
for accepting our invite. Thank you. And so without confusing audience any further, I request you to please share with us who you are, and then of course jumping into your session, which is all about testing as a culture in the organization. So yeah, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and thank you all for joining us. So my name is Claudia, and I am from Uruguay. I have a few slides from there, so I will start sharing it, so it's more fancy to see it. Let me know when the screen is enabled there. Great. So I am from Uruguay, South America. I have a computer engineering degree, more than 15 years of experience in software testing, having different roles. Currently, I work as a software testing consultant, a trainer at Jigsaw Labs, and also as a trainer at Agile Testing Fellowship. I'm very active in the Uruguayan testing community, where I organize Testing UI conference, and during my free time, I define myself as a travel freak. And I also love blogging about my trips when I have time. So today, I wanted to start this presentation with this image. I do like this graphic representation by Katrina about which roles are involved in testing according to different methodologies and frameworks. She defines testing as a collaborative activity and a shared responsibility. From my point of view, when we start adopting testing as part of the team responsibility, no matter if your concept is Agile or DevOps, one of the challenges that the team may face is the challenge of the how. How do we start? How do we do it? Another challenge from my point of view is which skills do we have, or which skills do we need? Because we want to take the best of the different areas of expertise that we have in our team, but it's also important to identify which other skills we need to incorporate as a team. So today I will share 7 lessons that I learned during this journey about adopting testing as part of the team culture. These lessons could be seen as recommendations if you're starting to adopt testing as a team responsibility, or if you are already in this context, I hope you can take new ideas to enhance the testing in your team. The first one is about building a common understanding about testing. Regardless of the testing strategies that you apply from a manual or automation testing perspective, it's important to build a common understanding about testing in your team in order to communicate properly and to understand the implication of testing. For example, to understand the coverage of your test, to understand what's being left out of the scope, and so on. So I will show you some examples to build this common understanding that we have applied during time. They are not a recipe, of course, because you always have to apply and adapt strategies to the context of your team, but surely they can help you or give you ideas on how to build that common understanding. So, for example, do internal trainings. We did internal trainings about functional testing in general, and also specific internal trainings depending on the testing strategy that we want to incorporate or adapt as a team. For example, we did internal trainings about exploratory testing and heuristics. We also have kickoff testing meetings with the whole team when the testing strategy is defined for the next release. For each feature, the tester, in this case me, presents the testing activities to be performed by the whole team and other testing tasks that should be performed regardless of the release feature, for example, verifying installers. We also incorporated follow-up testing meetings with the whole team. The main goal of this weekly meeting is to make sure the team is on the same page regarding progress for the release. We also adjust the testing strategy according to the status of the features from development perspectives. For example, another way or another example of building this common understanding about testing is to have internal documentation. For example, a wiki, a documentation repository where all the information around development, product guidance, testing, and more is included to help build this common understanding. For example, regarding testing, we have general information where each team member can find any information about testing. For example, information about our bugs workflow, our Mindmaps, test bed, testing environment, and test users, automation solutions, and so on. Everyone in the team can add or extend or edit the content in this repository, and having a centralized repository help us sharing knowledge in the team, as we are also promoting a culture of sharing. The second lesson that I want to share today is about adapting your testing strategies as a team approach when you are adopting a team testing culture when all roles participate. And this one is about adapting the testing strategies. I will share you briefly team testing strategy that I have applied in different teams. And that is Mindmaps as an input to test feature when doing exploratory testing by the team. Just to be on the same page, a mind map is a graphical representation of ideas and concepts. It's a creative and a logical way of note-taking using symbols, colors, shapes, words, lines, and images. We have a mind map which describes what a mind map is. For example, we can use the colors to emphasize ideas, or we can use symbols to show priorities or progress. And also we can show arrows to express dependencies. In general, a mind map helps us organize and visualize ideas, identify the dependencies, discuss ideas, enhance creativity, and share knowledge among others. Regarding this testing strategy, what we do is to build a mind map for each feature. Mind maps are elaborated by both the tester and the developers involved in the feature. A mind map includes the test conditions, ideas, and variables to cover a feature from the testing perspective. Mind maps help us have a common understanding of what to test, and through the mind maps, we can easily represent the dependencies between the different test variables and, okay. I don't know if there is a question. Okay. So,
no,
okay.
Claudia, you can go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. So the mind map can easily represent those dependencies between the different test variables and features. So, okay. So here we can see a full mind map, which includes the test ideas and variables for a feature of our product. I'm not expecting you to see it in detail. I just wanted to share an example in order to see its structure and size. Oh, there is a note here outside. Okay, so we defined a nomenclature and guidelines on how to design our mind maps in the team. Colors have their semantics as well as the floating nodes, but we are not going to see them in detail because of time restriction. But I wanted to highlight that having this nomenclature and guidelines in a level team help us focus on identifying the variables and not how to represent them. So everyone in the team can use it as an input when exploring the system. So we use the mind maps as reference for exploratory testing sessions. This means that we use the mind map as an input when testing a feature. Mind maps guide us thinking what to cover from a testing perspective. Remember that each mind maps includes the test ideas and variables we may consider when testing a certain feature. Through the different testing cycles, what we do is to reuse those mind maps, so we don't have to rethink the test ideas, conditions, and variables every time that we have to test a feature. We reuse that knowledge and share it through the team. We also extend and update the mind maps according to the changes in the product, or when a team member tests a feature and identify new test ideas and variables not included in the feature of the mind map. So I invite you all to see this webinar that I did in the Agile Testing Days Monday channel a few years ago, where in this webinar I share the nomenclature that I mentioned before, and I also share an example of a mind map for a feature in the product I work on, and how we design it and how we use it as a team approach. In all those strategies that we tackle as a team, we have a common learning, and we have something that is common between all of them. For all our strategies, we have a repository with defined folder hierarchy and file naming conventions, guidelines and nomenclature convention. And also we have a proactive attitude to update and extend the testing artifacts according to the feature changes. And also what we do is to define a guardian of the strategy, to evangelize the approach, coach the team, and follow up the strategy and adapt it according to the timeline of the team. Also, when starting to apply a new approach or adapt a current testing strategy, okay. So when, as I was mentioning, when starting to apply a new approach or adapt a current testing strategy as a team, what we do is to try to work collaborative, validating and brainstorming, because as we have different areas of expertise and strengths, we can enrich our strategy. So it's very important when you are incorporating and adapting a testing strategy as a team where all roles participate, is to take into account all the areas and areas of expertise to make sure that you enrich your strategy and consider all the point of view. So let me. Okay, as a team, okay. Okay. Yes, okay. So as a team, we gained a deeper understanding of the testing effort required for a release. Also, the impact that a fix has from the testing effort perspective, and that implies that as a consequence, we have improved the triage of our bugs. We also improve our knowledge of the product beyond our specific activities. And also, as everyone in the team tests and reports bugs, the bug tracker workflow has been improved also. For example, we added yes. Okay. Okay. So, for example, we added a risk field to our bug template in the track system. So, what we do with this field is to set by the developer when setting the bug as fixed. And this field indicates from the developer perspective how risky the fix is. And this setting is used as an input when doing regression testing in order to have more information about how much effort may be spent during the regression testing. So what we do there is to build a bridge between the development knowledge and also the testing knowledge to take that information into account in the testing strategy when performing regression testing. The next lesson learned that I want to share with you today is about building a common understanding about the criteria of done. From my point of view, it's very important to have a clear criteria of done in the team in order to mature features from the development perspective, and also to have a shared trust level of how well the feature behaves according to what has been defined. It's help us understand the test coverage too. So I wanted to share first what we did at first and didn't work. So at first, we tried to have the same criteria of done for all features and changes in our code. And we defined gate guardians in the team from the different aspects to consider. For example, the visual designer verified that the visual design implementation corresponded to the defined one. The technical writer checked that the defined text were correctly included. The tester or the team members testing checked the Mindmaps, testbed, exploratory testing sessions were done, and also automated checks were implemented at different levels in the solution. What happened there, that was, it didn't work because the criteria of done should depend on the complexity of the feature, on the risk of the solution, and also on the business value that the feature or fix has. So in that way, what we did is to optimize our time, resources, and strategy. So what we did is to keep the idea of verifying the different aspects for a feature or fix. But before starting to work with a feature or a fix from the development perspective, what we define is where we are going to have, what we are going to do. For example, if you're going to have code reviews, early testing activities, Mindmaps or testbed, at which automation layer we are going to automate, and so on. So what we do when we are planning the feature, for each feature or fix, we define as a team what is going to be the testing criteria of done. So we have a common understanding of that. So doing that, what improved for us was the criteria of ready to test too. So what we try to do is to get features mature before ready to test, and it's important to optimize time and reduce iterations between development and testing. So here, the role of the tester focus both on coverage and also finding deeper problems instead of focusing in the irritation in superficial issues. So another lesson learned is to adapt your process to fit your needs. For example, in one of the teams that I used to be part of, at first we adopted the Scrum, which helped us incorporate a framework of good practices and guidelines to improve the way we were working in. But what happened after a while is that we started to modify our process as we matured as a team and we became more critical about the way we worked. So for example, what did we adapt? For example, we adapted a lot of things, but today I would like to share one of them. For example, we stopped doing daily stand-up meetings, and instead we do a weekly meeting. And during this, and why? Because during this meeting, each team member mentions what they are working on, what comes next, and if there is any impediment to perform their task. But we stopped doing daily stand-up meeting because most of the time there wasn't much to say from one day to the next, and we started to get bored. And as we understand as a team the importance and value of the daily stand-up meetings, the value of what is shared, we started to have the meeting on weekly basis, because during the meeting, any team member can bring up any topic and they consider relevant to talk as a team. For example, we also incorporate design meetings to discuss the solution before implementing them, and also considering the testing perspective to highlight, for example, hidden assumptions. So another lesson learned is that testing is a team responsibility. My personal lesson learned about this are mostly two. One of them is not to be afraid of changes, although sometimes transitions are a little bit hard. And also, it's really important to be open-minded, to adapt your role, and to collaborate to build bridges in your team to reach a common understanding and engagement about testing. My advice there is to start doing a small experiments. You will fail, you will learn, and then you will start again. But the important thing is to get started. Besides performing testing activities, support manual and automated testing, in my experience, in this type of context, the tester becomes a facilitator and evangelist, because the tester defines follow-ups and adjusts the testing strategy to be applied by the team, shares and evangelize the knowledge of testing with the team, tries also to consolidate the project goals and constraints and the quality goals, and also does a lot of training the team to perform and adapt the testing strategy to consider the different areas of expertise of each team members. It's very important from my point of view that or at least what I have learned is that it's very important to be flexible enough to adapt and wear other hats depending on the needs of the product and the team. And from my experience, this lesson is beyond testing. So I think one of the most important lesson learned that is that the importance of knowing your team culture. Changes always are being there, they are a fact. So our teams need to have the tools to adapt to them. So it's important to create the right environment to drive the changes. Soft skills are more important than in the past. From my point of view, these values and practices are needed to build a team culture. And I would like to highlight respect to drive any change. Changes are hard and we have to set the right conditions to drive them. So I encourage you to promote activities, to share knowledge across disciplines in your team, and enjoy learning beyond your expertise. And the last lesson that I want to share with you today is about getting support from management. In my experience, most of changes and improvements are driving in a bottom-up direction. So it's really important to have autonomy, to try new strategies, but it's also very important to have management support when trying new ideas to enhance the team strategies and methodologies. Otherwise, from my point of view, it's very hard to allocate time and resources consistently. So my lesson learned there about this is that it's very important to share the whys, and add context and help to communicate. So it's very important to make sure also to pick the correct time to share your thoughts in order to be effective. And also it's very important sometimes to be patient. So to sum up, I think to sum up, my recommendation or lesson learned about adopting testing as a team culture is to build a common understanding about testing, adapt your testing strategies as a team approach, build a common understanding about criteria of done, take ownership of your process, remembering that testing is a team responsibility, also nourish your team culture and get support from management. So I would like to wrap up with this phrase to keep calm and enhance your team testing culture. So thanks the organization for having me. You can always reach me through the email or Twitter, and I think we have time for questions. I am not quite sure if I went very fast or not. Sorry about that.
Yes, we have